I remember the moment so clearly. The music had just stopped. The guests had started to leave. And my new husband, he turned to me, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It's done." That's all he said. No kiss, no smile, no warmth, just those two cold final words. At first I thought he was just tired. Maybe he was overwhelmed, but days turned into weeks, and the truth began to bleed through the silence. He didn't marry me out of love. He married me to destroy me. He thought I ruined his family years ago. He believed I betrayed the man I once loved and broke his brother's heart. But here's what he didn't know. I never betrayed anyone. I was set up, lied about, framed by the one person I trusted most. So when he came back into my life, all charming and sweet, I didn't know I was walking into a trap. A trap carefully planned, beautifully wrapped in the illusion of love. But love was never the plan. Revenge was. He played his part. And I played mine until the truth, the real truth came out. And when it did, it shattered everything. Before we dive into the whole story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, if life pulls you away, you'll never miss the ending, or the stories we share that might just feel a little too close to home. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. To the man I thought was the love of my life, and the revenge he never saw coming. They say love shows up when you least expect it. For me, it walked into a bookstore on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was standing in the self-help aisle, flipping through a book called How to Move On with Grace, when I felt someone brush past me. I looked up and saw a man with deep brown eyes, a quiet smile, and a leather jacket soaked from the rain. He said, "That one won't help. You should try poetry instead." That's how I met David. He wasn't loud or flashy like the men I used to fall for. He was gentle. He listened, and he made me laugh in the quietest way. He didn't ask about my past. He didn't push. He just showed up again and again until I realized I missed him when he wasn't around. It started with coffee, then dinners, then long drives to nowhere with old country music playing through the speakers. And I felt, safe. For the first time in years, I let my guard down. After everything I'd been through, I didn't think I could trust again. But David made it feel easy. He knew the right words, the right pauses, and the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. One night after a late dinner, he looked at me and said, "I know someone must have hurt you. I just want to be the one. Who doesn't?" I cried that night. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw the cracks in me and didn't run. He never pushed for details. Never asked about the man I used to love, the one who left me without saying goodbye, the one whose family blamed me for something I didn't do, and I thought that was mercy. I thought it was love. Looking back now, I realize it was strategy. David didn't need to ask about my past. He already knew everything. Every mistake, every rumor, every scar, because he had lived inside that story. He had watched the fallout. And for years, he had waited, patient, kind, and carefully planning. But at the time, all I saw was a man who made me believe in beginnings again. Our wedding was small, simple, filled with laughter, wildflowers, and soft promises under the summer sky. People said we looked like the happiest couple they'd ever seen. And for a while, I believed it too. He made me feel like I was finally home, and maybe that's why I didn't see the cracks. The way he flinched when someone mentioned my past, the way his smile froze when my best friend Megan hugged me just a little too tightly. I thought it was nothing, but now I know better. Sometimes the people who seem to save you are the ones holding the match. They say the past always catches up with you, and I used to think I had outrun mine. But memories have a way of resurfacing, especially when you least expect them. It started with a name, James, David's older brother. The name appeared so casually in a conversation one evening when David was telling me about his childhood, but the way his voice tightened just for a moment stuck with me, like a wound that had never fully healed. I hadn't heard the name James in over a decade, but once it meant everything to me. You see, before David, before the calm and the comfort, there was James, my first love, my greatest heartbreak. We were just 22, young, reckless, madly in love. The way only young hearts can be. James was charming, brilliant, and funny in that way, that made your ribs ache from laughing too hard. He made me feel like I could be anyone, do anything. He believed in me before I ever believed in myself, and for a time, I truly thought we'd spend the rest of our lives together. But that dream ended violently. Suddenly, all because of a rumor, a cruel, devastating rumor. Someone told James that I had cheated on him, that I had been secretly seeing his best friend behind his back. They even claimed they had proof texts, phone calls, photos, but none of it was true. Not a single word. I begged him to believe me. I cried until my voice was raw. I showed him my phone. I told him where I had been, but the damage was done. His trust was broken, and worse, he didn't just walk away from me. He vanished. His family stopped speaking to me. His mother returned a birthday gift I had sent. His friends unfriended me. And overnight I went from the girl everyone adored to the woman everyone whispered about. That small town suddenly felt like a prison. The grocery store, the gas station, even church, everywhere I went, people looked at me as if I had done something unforgivable. Eventually, I packed my things and left. I changed cities, changed my phone number, tried to change my heart, but the pain, it followed me, and no one ever told me the truth. Who started the rumor? Why? Why would someone go so far to destroy something that felt so real? Years passed. I tried to move on. I tried to forget. Until David came along, and somehow I convinced myself that what happened with James was behind me. That David was different. That I was different. But now, hearing that name again, James, it rattled something deep inside me. A part of me I thought had healed began to ache again. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up James online. There wasn't much. Just a few old photos, some mentions in alumni newsletters, but then I found something that sent a chill through me, an article from 10 years ago, titled, "Local Family Grieves Sudden Loss of Son." After heartbreak and scandal, it was about James, and it was dated just 3 weeks after we broke up. He hadn't just disappeared, he'd died. I felt the room spin. My hands went cold. The article didn't mention my name, but I knew what they were talking about. My chest tightened as I read that he had died in a car accident late at night, alone. They said it was ruled an accident, but something in the tone, something in the way they described it, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just an accident. And I began to wonder, had David known all along who I was? Was our meeting really a coincidence? Or had it all been part of something darker? The perfect man suddenly didn't feel so perfect anymore, and I wasn't sure if I was the woman he thought I was, but one thing was certain. The past I thought I had buried was now knocking at my front door. Our wedding day was beautiful. Sunny skies, fresh flowers, laughter echoing through the garden. It looked like a scene from a magazine. But behind the smiles, something already felt ... off. David was calm. Calm, he wasn't nervous or emotional. Like most grooms, he didn't even tear up when I walked down the aisle. He just stood there, still and unreadable, like he was watching a performance he'd already seen 100 times at the altar. He took my hands and whispered, "You look perfect." But his eyes didn't match his words. They were cold, unblinking. I thought maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe this was just his way of handling big emotions. So I smiled. I held on to the moment. I held on to him. We exchanged vows. His were ... generic. Mine were personal, heartfelt, trembling with truth. And when I said, "I choose you today, tomorrow, and always," he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Still, I brushed it off. We walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, hand in hand. Cameras flashed. Family cheered. People clinked glasses, danced, toasted to our forever. But forever didn't even last through the night. That evening, as the last guests left and the house fell quiet, David poured himself a glass of scotch. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and stared at me. "You don't have to pretend anymore," he said. His voice was flat, cold. I blinked, confused. Pretend about what? He didn't answer, just handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed photo, a grainy old snapshot. It showed me at 22, hugging a man at a party. James's best friend. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't proof of anything, but David looked at me like I was guilty of something unforgivable. "You destroyed my brother," he said. "You ruined him. You ruined my family." My heart stopped. It was the first time he'd ever said James was his brother. The first time he'd said anything about that chapter of my life. "You ... knew." "I whispered." He nodded. "I knew everything. I just wanted to see if you'd ever admit it." I felt dizzy, like the floor had dropped out from under me. "You married me for revenge." He didn't say yes, but he didn't deny it either. He just sipped his drink and looked away. I wanted to scream, to cry, to defend myself, but all I could do was sit there in my wedding dress and feel the walls close in. It all made sense now. His perfect timing, his sweet patience, his sudden proposal after just a few months. None of it was about love. It was about control, about punishing me for something I didn't do. That the room was silent for a long time. Then he said the words I'll never forget. "It's done." Just like that. 2 words, cold, final. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat by the window, still in my gown, listening to the wind. And I thought about James, about how quickly love can turn into pain, how stories can be twisted, and how sometimes the truth gets buried so deep. Even the people closest to you can't see it. But I wasn't going to let that happen again. This time, I was going to dig it up myself, even if it meant destroying everything I thought I knew about love. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No good morning. No kiss. Just the echo of betrayal still ringing in my ears. David had already left. He didn't leave a note. Not even a message. It was as if the man I married had disappeared. In his place was a stranger who had been waiting all along to destroy me. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my wedding ring. Was it just a symbol of his plan? Of my punishment, I thought about leaving, packing a bag, running far away. But something stopped me. A voice inside me whispered, "No more running. Not this time." I needed answers. Why had David gone this far? Why pretend to love me, to build a life with me, to share my dreams, my fears only, to tear it all apart? And most of all, who started that lie all those years ago? The one that cost me James, the one that cost him his life. If I could prove it wasn't me, maybe I could save whatever pieces of myself were still left. That's when I opened his office drawer. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but what I found turned my stomach. There was a folder. Inside were printed screenshots, old ones. Texts that looked like they were between me and James's best friend. Flirty, intimate, damning. But I had never written those texts, not one. The timestamps were from nights I was with James. The messages referenced things I never said. And the language, it wasn't mine. They were fake, fabricated, but they looked real. To real it was a setup. And David had those screenshots before he ever met me, which meant he'd been planning this for years. Every smile, every touch, every promise, all part of a twisted performance. I closed the folder and felt my hands shaking. Then something even darker crossed my mind. What if he hadn't acted alone? What if someone helped him fabricate the lie that broke James's heart? What if someone close to me had betrayed me long before David ever entered my life? So I called the only person who might still have the truth. James's mother. She hadn't spoken to me in over 10 years. When she picked up, her voice was colder than I remembered. But I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just asked her one question. Do you believe I cheated on James? There was silence, then a sigh, and finally she said, I never did, but David. He showed us messages, and James believed him. I froze. David? I asked. David showed you those messages before James died. She hesitated again. Yes, he said he found them by accident, that he was trying to protect his brother. That was the moment everything shattered. David hadn't just married me for revenge. He created the lie. He planted the seed. He was the one who made James believe I betrayed him. He didn't just destroy James after he died. He destroyed him while he was still alive, and now he was trying to finish the job with me. I hung up, hands trembling, heart racing. This wasn't grief. It wasn't love twisted by loss. It was something much darker. This was a man who wore grief like a mask. A man who played the long game. A man who didn't just want to punish me. He wanted to erase me. But he had made one mistake. He underestimated the woman I had become. I stared at the folder on the table, the fake messages, the cold silence from David, the truth I thought I knew crumbling in my hands, and yet I didn't cry. Not anymore. I had cried enough tears over things I didn't do. Over love, I thought, was real, over guilt that was never mine now. I needed proof. I went to the attic where my past still lived in dusty boxes, old journals, photo albums, a shoebox filled with printed photos from the early 2000s before everything fell apart. And there it was, a birthday party James threw for me. I was in a blue dress. He was holding a cake. And in the background, clear as day, stood the man from the fake messages. James's best friend, smirking too close to me. I flipped the photo over. June 7th, written in my handwriting. But the messages David used as proof. They were dated June 6th, saying we were at a hotel in another city. It didn't match, not just off by a little, completely wrong. I had physical proof that I wasn't with that man that night, that I was at a party with James. And then something clicked. Dead, dusty, forgotten. But I still had the charger. When I plugged it in, the screen flickered to life, slowly. Memories loaded, text messages, photos, voicemails. And there it was, a voicemail from James. Hey babe, thanks for last night. That party was amazing. You make everything better. I love you. Timestamp. June 7th, the morning after the party. The morning after I supposedly betrayed him. My chest tightened. He hadn't doubted me, not then. The lie must have come later. Maybe when David showed him the fake screenshots that meant alone, then fed him the lie. It wasn't just revenge. It was manipulation. Cruel, strategic, planned. And worst of all, he had dragged me into it years later to complete the punishment. But now I had what I needed. Photos, voicemails, dates that didn't match up. I wasn't just going to confront him. I'd buy brick. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Lena? She was James's cousin. Smart, sharp, the only person in his family who had doubts about the cheating story from the start. I told her everything. The fake messages. The wedding. David's cold confession. When I played her James's old voicemail, she started to cry. Claire, I knew something wasn't right, she said. She agreed to help me. She still had access to James's old email accounts, old photo backups. She started digging while I focused on piecing together the timeline. 2 nights later, she sent me an email. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Attached was a screen recording James's original phone backup. Inside it were real messages from those weeks. Sweet ones. Tender. No mention of betrayal. No accusations until one night 3 weeks before he died. Suddenly, the tone changed. Accusations, heartbreak, silence. It lined up exactly with the day David visited him. His only visit in months? That was the day he planted the lie. That was the day. James began to fall apart. I dropped the phone not from shock, but from rage. David didn't just take James from me. He took James from himself. He rewrote his brother's memory, poisoned it, turned love into shame, and then he married me to watch me drown in it. But not anymore. The truth wasn't just on my side. I had the receipts, and I was done playing the broken one. I thought I was ready to confront David, armed with evidence, backed by truth, fueled by years of silent pain, turned to fire. But just as I was preparing to go face him, I got a text from Lena, my best friend, the one who held me when James died, who dried my tears, who told me I deserved to move on, and introduced me to David. The message was simple. We need to talk now, before it's too late. I met her at our favorite coffee shop, the same booth we'd sat in 100 times before. But this time, she couldn't look me in the eye. She was trembling. No makeup, no small talk, just silence. Until finally, she whispered, "Claire, I need to tell you something. I should have told you years ago." My stomach sank. She reached into her bag and handed me a worn envelope. Inside were printed emails, dozens of them. Between her and David, the earliest one dated 2 months before I even met him. "She doesn't suspect a thing. Keep her close. We're almost there. Let me know when she's vulnerable." I couldn't breathe. "You were working with him?" I asked, voice cracking. She nodded, tears spilling. "It started as a favor," she said. "He said you destroyed James, that you lied, and I believed him. I thought I was helping protect his memory. But you introduced me to him," I snapped. "You pushed me toward him. You planned it." She sobbed harder. "He promised. He wouldn't hurt you, that he just wanted closure. I didn't know he was going to marry you, to punish you like this." I looked at her, this woman who had been in every chapter of my life, my confidant, my sister in all but blood. "You sat at my wedding," I said slowly. "You gave a toast." "I thought maybe he had changed," she whispered. "I thought maybe he fell for you for real." But he hadn't. And now, I knew the person who sold me out wasn't just David. It was the one person I never questioned. The friend who watched me rebuild my life with a man who hated me and said nothing. "Why now?" I asked. She wiped her eyes. "Because I saw your face at the reception. You looked happy and I realized he was never going to stop. And if I stayed silent again, it would be my fault too." I stood up, heart racing. "This isn't just betrayal," I said. "This is premeditated. This is abuse." "I know," she whispered, "and I'll testify. I'll give you everything." I walked out of the cafe without another word. My world was upside down, my marriage a lie, my past rewritten, my best friend a traitor. But somehow, in the middle of all that, Panay felt a strange sense of clarity. They had tried to bury me with lies, but all they had done was give me a shovel to dig up the truth, and now it was their turn to face the storm. David came home late. His tie was loose, his face pale. There was a tension in his eyes I hadn't seen before. He knew I sat calmly at the kitchen table, just like he had days ago when he shattered my world. Only this time, the silence belonged to him. "You went through my files," he finally said. I didn't blink. "You mean the ones where you framed me? Lied to your own brother? Manipulated my best friend into handing me over like a lamb to the slaughter?" He flinched. "You don't understand." "No, David," I interrupted. "You don't understand. You built this entire marriage on lies, and you thought I'd never find out. But guess what?" I leaned in. "You weren't the only one who could play the long game." I dropped Lena's confession on the table. His eyes scanned it. The color drained from his face. "I trusted her," he muttered. "So did I said softly. "Funny how betrayal feels, isn't it?" He sat down slowly. There was no anger now, no cold smirk, just a broken man. "I thought I was protecting James," he whispered. "He loved you so much. When I saw those messages, the ones you faked, I snapped. His eyes filled with tears. It was supposed to be justice. I didn't think I'd fall in love with you. I froze. He looked at me for the first time in weeks. I didn't plan on it, Claire. Somewhere along the way, I forgot it was a game. There it was. The last twist of the knife. The man who ruined my life now claimed he loved me, but it was too late. You don't get to love someone after you destroy them, I said quietly. That's not love. That's control. That's guilt. I stood up and walked to the door. He didn't follow. He just asked, almost childlike, "Where are you going?" I turned, looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm going to start over. Without lies, without shadows, without you." As I stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner, real. For years, I had been carrying a weight I didn't deserve, but now it was on his shoulders and me. I was free from the lies, the manipulation, the people who said they loved me but only wanted to own me. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew this. I was walking toward truth, and that was more powerful than any revenge. Life has a way of revealing the truth, even when it hides behind the ones we trust most. If stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you can always come back to finish later, or discover the next twist waiting around the corner. 6 months later, the house was finally quiet. No lawyers, no broken promises, no half-truths hiding in corners, just me, a hot mug of tea, and the sound of wind rustling the curtains. I had moved back into the cottage James and I once dreamed of retiring in. It was old, a little creaky but real. No performance, no game, just a woman rebuilding her life, one breath at a time. There were still scars, moments when I'd hear a song or smell his cologne and feel the sting. But pain, I've learned, doesn't mean you're broken. Sometimes it means you're healing. One day, as I was tending the garden, a familiar voice called out from behind the fence, "Claire." I turned, dawned. There she was. Lena. I froze. She looked older somehow. Not in her face, but in her eyes. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said quickly. "I just wanted to return something." She reached into her bag and handed me a small wooden box. My old memory box. The one I thought was lost when David and I moved. "I took it," she admitted, "when I was still lying. I don't know. Why, guilt? Maybe, but it's yours." I opened it slowly after she left. Inside were letters James had written to me before our wedding, a photo of us on the beach, and a tiny folded note. One I hadn't remembered, in James's handwriting. It read, "If you ever doubt yourself, read this and remember how strong you are." I laughed softly, then cried. Closure isn't always about clean endings. Sometimes it's a messy, bittersweet quiet. I didn't hate Lena anymore. I didn't need revenge on David. They had to live with their own choices, do me. I chose peace. Later that evening, I lit a candle, sat on the porch, and watched the sun dip below the trees, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had survived betrayal, faced down lies, and came out stronger, not harder, just wiser. And when the stars appeared overhead, I whispered a thank you to James, to the truth, to the girl I used to be and the woman I'd become. Expert's reflection, a closing thought. What we just witnessed was not just a story about betrayal or revenge. It was a story about how easily love can be twisted, and how painfully truth can be buried even by the ones closest to us. David thought revenge would bring closure, but revenge built on lies never heals. It only wounds in circles. Claire, on the other hand, didn't just survive. She uncovered the truth. She walked away, not with vengeance, but with dignity. And that's something worth remembering, because many of us have been Claire. Maybe not in the exact same way, but in the silent betrayals, the unanswered questions, the nights we asked ourselves, was it my fault? If this story reminded you of something in your own life, someone you once trusted, or a moment when truth finally set you free, I invite you to share it in the comments. You never know. Your words might be the lifeline someone else needs tonight. And if you found value in this story, consider subscribing to the channel. That way, you'll always know where to find stories that don't just entertain but speak to the heart. There's more coming, more untold truths, more moments of clarity and redemption. Thank you for being here. And remember, sometimes the most powerful closure is the peace you choose.